We're very excited. So Sam Lamba is the CEO of Lumari, YC-backed company building a AI agent for supply chain and procurement teams. He's previously held supply chain enablement and technology roles at Google, Amazon Robotics, and Tesla. So a lot of huge background, and also he holds several patents. So Sam, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours, Sam.
Perfect. Excited to be here. Could you give me... Oh, I got it. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
We got it.
Perfect. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I'm Sam, and today we're going to do something, or try to do something pretty simple. Understanding AI and where it fits in, and more importantly, where it doesn't. Since AI is such a broad term and encompasses so many different things, I'll keep some parts high level, but also explain what exactly AI is and how it functionally works and where it can be useful. The goal is, if you take one thing away from today, I want it to be like a practical filter. When you hear AI in a product page, in some product, quickly able to answer, is this a real capability? Is this going to help me? Or is this kind of a marketing label, a hype that can kind of help, that's not going to add a lot of value? So we already kind of did a little bit of intro about me. And like Joanna mentioned, I'm currently the CEO of a Y Combinator-based startup. For those who don't know Y Combinator, it's the same organization that originally started OpenAI. OpenAI actually used to be a research branch of Y Combinator. Before starting Lumari, I previously worked at places like Google, Tesla, Cummins, and Amazon, and spent my entire career focused on supply chain as well as AI. So I've spent a lot of time inside all the messy parts and kind of go into AI, all the inputs and outputs, the year-long ERP implementations, working with consultants, and kind of the whole 9 yards. And I'm pretty familiar with how AI works and where it doesn't work. As you can see from my background, I'm also based out of San Francisco. So the goal for today is to cover the fundamentals of AI, where it applies within supply chain, and the problems that people run into. I want to make sure we end up with a clear understanding of where AI works and doesn't, and what the future looks like for the space when it comes to supply chain. We obviously have a limited amount of time, and I want to leave some time for questions. So if there is anything that you guys want to dive deeper in, I will leave my contact information on the last slide, and feel free to reach out. We'll be walking through a bunch of different concepts, some of which you might already know, some of which you might not. And the goal is to kind of understand where AI can be helpful and where it can provide the best value for all of you guys. And why are we here? Well, because every single tool today talks about AI, and AI is such a big concept right now. Every single thing is an AI tool, and every single platform is either AI first or AI native, and there is something new happening every single week and every single month. We have AI agents for this or AI orchestration for that, and AI just infused into everything. And the problem is not that AI is useless. The problem is that the labels stop meaning anything when two products could both be AI powered, and one is like a real big step change, and the other one is a simple summarizer or basic chatbot that is just added on to the exact same workflow. So I think this is one of the big reasons there is a lot of skepticism and feeling overwhelmed, because there's so much going on, there's so much noise, and it makes a lot of sense. So hopefully you can kind of discern from useful AI versus just a lot of marketing hype. So kind of diving a little bit into why this is happening. The main reason it's happening is because AI is such a great marketing tool. It is this broad umbrella term that can mean basically so many different things, and we'll dive a little bit into that. And it's very easy for a lot of legacy tools and products to add a thin layer and call themselves an AI product. The core product might now change. They might have added a simple summarizer, but you can now rebrand and be a AI first product. So filter number one is kind of understanding, what does the AI actually do that people are talking about? What will improve or fix in this product? And this is kind of a simple filter that you want to keep in your head as you kind of go. Does the AI actually change the workflow outcome? Does it change the interface? Is it just a nicer way to search something or ask questions, which maybe might be helpful, but not really transformational? If it's reliably reducing cycle time, reducing the number of touches that you need to do, closing loop back into the system, there might be some real value there. And kind of diving into where that AI fits in is very important. And as you can imagine, when there's a new tool, there is a lot of noise and a lot of hype, and it's important to kind of discern from the two. This is a real newspaper clipping from when internet first came out. And as you can see, there's a lot of parallels between the words that people use to describe internet and now when there's a new hype cycle with AI. The point is that early on, it's hard to see where the real value of AI will land because the first wave is messy and overpromised. AI is just kind of getting past that first phase. There is now ability to understand real capabilities and understand where it can actually provide value, and having the right stance of not just having blind adoption and trying everything that's out there and just believing all the marketing hype, but you also need to not totally reject that AI is just not helpful. It's a waste of time. You have to kind of experiment and see where it works specifically for you. And anything new is just a tool that we have to use and find value from. So to get started, I wanted to kind of give a baseline understanding of what AI is, and understanding that allows us to understand where AI is heading and where we can get the biggest value. AI is just a huge umbrella term. It encompasses everything from machine learning to deep reinforcement learning to deep learning. LLMs is a subcategory of machine learning, and you kind of can go down that rabbit hole. ML is just a system that learns from data at a high level. LLMs, which is predominantly what we talk about these days when we talk about AI, it stands for large language models. And the idea is that it's been trained on text to give out output that's text-based. VLMs is something that's came out a few years back. And to go with that, it's a vision-based language model. It means that it can understand images and PDFs and invoices and packing slips and scan forms. And now there's the big buzzword that's happening right now, agents. Agents are not a separate type of AI. At its fundamental level, AI agents is just basically a LLM or a VLM plus tools that allow it to take actions. Tools meaning things like browsing the web, sending emails, updating the ERP, creating a shipment, opening a ticket, taking multi-step action. So the simple equation on the slide kind of explains what agents are. It's just LLMs with tools. Agents are things that can actually execute and take action on your behalf. So that's the real power of some of these agentic capabilities. So since LLM is kind of the big focus of what everyone talks about today and where the biggest value is kind of being seen for a lot of people, I wanted to make sure we understand at a baseline level what even is LLM. We know that LLM is kind of spitting out words and text and is able to kind of answer questions, but at its fundamental, LLM is just predicting the next word and trying to use the context it's given to figure out what the next word in the sentence should be. That's it. There's no other magic, no consciousness, nothing else. It's very simple math followed by pattern matching to understand what the next word should be. Understanding this explains both the power and kind of failure modes with LLMs that we see today. The power is if you give it good context, it can write, summarize, classify, and extract, and even plan some steps. The failure mode is that if the context is missing or it's ambiguous, it'll just produce an answer because it's just predicting the next word. The problem is it's going to sound very confident, but be very wrong. And when people say AI doesn't work for us, most of the time, it's not because the model is bad. It's because the systems weren't designed correctly to kind of give the AI the ability to predict the right next word. I wanted to dive into a very specific example just to make that idea concrete. When we say it's predicting the next word, we literally mean exactly that. So for example, if I say the supplier delivered the order, the model kind of takes all of its training data, all of its knowledge, and kind of guesses what comes next. It's doing a probability based on different things that it thinks is going to come next, and predicting which one it should be. So the supplier delivered the order. Options can be late. A lot of people complain about supplier delivering late. It's been trained on that. It might predict that first. On time, early, damaged. People are complaining about damaged shipping. That's another thing that's been trained on. So it's going to guess some of those things. Now, if you add some more context, the next word prediction is going to get better. The supplier, known for reliability, delivered the order and the probability now shift. Now it's, okay, the supplier is known for reliability. So more likely it's going to be on time. And that kind of jumps up. It might be early. Of course, if they're reliable, they might be early. And it's less likely that the next word is going to be late. So that's essentially all this LLM idea that exists. Context changes everything. And having the right context kind of changes the outputting results. In supply chain terms, if you ask an AI to summarize a contract without giving it the standard clauses or risk tolerance, it'll summarize it, but it might miss what you actually care about because it's doing the most baseline next word prediction. If you ask it to draft the supplier email without providing it the necessary context, the PO information, the last thread, timeline, it'll draft something, but it might not sound right. It might not work properly. And then you might have to give it more edits in context. So fundamentally, context is king. I think now we'll go talk a little bit about AI and where it fits into supply chain. I think generally I've seen teams fall into three buckets when they're trying to figure out where AI fits in. And this applies to teams as well as individual people. There are people who are completely skeptics. They're not sure where AI is going to fit in. It's all hype, and it makes a lot of sense why you might think like that. There's a lot of noise in this space, and it's hard to make progress. But it's hard to make progress and improve what you're doing unless you kind of experiment and try the tools out. You might find some value where you hadn't previously thought about. There's the curious people who have tried ChatGPT and it's interesting, but you can't figure out how it applies to work. And that is also very fair. Like I mentioned, not having the right context makes it very hard for these models to be fundamentally useful. It doesn't know what it should be helping you with. But even just trying and playing around with ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or any other tool can kind of teach you how to provide the right context and can kind of help in that personal productivity boost. Trying these out is kind of stage one of figuring out where AI fits in for our lives. And the productivity gain kind of start compounding as you learn how AI is helpful and where it kind of struggles. And then the final kind of next stage are the people who are kind of adopting it fully. They've kind of used ChatGPT, saw value, and now they're embedding it into repeatable workflow. This is where AI can kind of really help because it has the right context. It kind of fits into your system and it knows what it's trying to do. And these are people who are trying pilots and running programs and seeing the big efficiency gain and seeing where the value is. They have this narrow scope goal and they're seeing where the value is. The goal is kind of moving up one step at a time, making little progress instead of aiming for perfection every time. The experimentation is what allows individuals to kind of upskills and make these organization-wide improvements. AI just makes it accessible for people to make incremental progress and find areas to improve, but you have to make those personal incremental steps to get familiar with AI and find where it fits in for you specifically. Cool. Moving on to the strengths that we see for supply chain team. Given all of that, I wanted to kind of dive into some of the strengths for AI agents and LLMs and where it can kind of help at work and where it helps with operations. As we talked about, AI is very good working with text. And because of its capability, it can do a great job at extracting information from documents and pulling out useful information from long pages and PDFs. This is one of the biggest kind of immediate wins that basically anyone can do as long as you have the internal ChatGPT or some sort of platform that you can feed this data into. And we know that supply chain kind of runs on PDFs and emails and attachments and Excels. AI can kind of take all of this data and help you make decisions and convert that into structured fields that you can use in other areas. Secondly, the other benefit is summarizing long contracts and threads and emails. Most recently, Gmail kind of launched their own capability that will summarize any long thread and kind of give you the high level overview. The idea is that LLMs, because they are so good with language, it can take these 70-page contracts, and if you ask it specific questions, it can extract those specific components and answer those based on what is the most valuable for you. And it can compress those 70-page and summarize it and give you the key finding, kind of talk to those PDFs. The third area that is becoming bigger and bigger and helping a lot of teams is drafting and standardizing kind of communication. Supplier emails, RFQs, status updates, all of these different things, AI can be very good at producing consistent professional communication that follows a template. AI doesn't replace any of the judgment calls and strategic decision, but at minimum, it can remove some of the back and forth that kind of go in it and some of the repetitive tasks that kind of go into some of these processing and can handle some of the follow-up work automatically. Fourth is kind of doing some of these SOP-driven workflows, basically areas where we have very clearly defined tasks and steps that we want someone to take, even if there's some ambiguity, some judgment call. Well, AI is very good at making that, given the right context. So if you have a clear process, whether it's like routing some exceptions to the right person so they can take care of it, triggering an approval based on certain conditions. Someone has made a request for about $50,000, and this should go for a real human approval to certain people. If it's less than 50,000, let's look to see if they filled out all the paperwork and let's just approve it. Updating systems and sources of record. It's very helpful here to update the master data and update the source of truth, and following certain playbooks and executing repetitive steps. A theme that you'll notice with a lot of these strengths is if they are very language heavy, if they're repetitive, if there are a lot of action that needs to be taken, AI is going to do a good job at it. And anywhere that you're reading and writing and copy pasting, AI can often help. So thinking through your day-to-day and understanding where this might fit in, where you're spending a lot of time just doing the same thing again and again. If you find it boring, very likely AI is going to be very good at it. So there's no point talking about strengths without understanding where AI is weak. AI is very good at hallucinating. What that means is that it can produce plausible sounding facts that are completely wrong. And we saw why that might be, because we saw how AI worked. Without the right context, AI is just guessing the next word. So it's very easy for AI to just make up facts and be very confident in those facts. So for anything critical and very important, it's important to have the right guardrails and approvals to make sure that things are happening correctly. Make sure you have human in the loop, validation, and approval, as well as audit trails to know when things have gone wrong. Secondly, AI is not very good at math. It's not very good at doing complex calculations, working with numbers and quantities and doing conversions. You need a validation layer to kind of make sure that AI does it correctly. Often people can give AI tools like an Excel sheet or a coding workspace so that AI can convert all of these math into specific steps that it needs to take, and then something else is doing it more deterministically. You should treat kind of AI when you're trying to make it do complex math in comparison, just like an intern. It can help you, but you need to kind of verify it and make sure that things are correct and double check all the math. Third, kind of having that business understanding. Without access to systems, if it's an isolated environment like ChatGPT, it's hard for it to have the historical data, the processes, and information to understand the unique context with which it should be answering. So it's going to often give some generic answer that might not be the right fit for what you're trying to do. And it needs to be connected to the specific data and policies and workflows and constraints to make sure it's truly useful. And then finally, kind of doing some of this relationship heavy negotiation and stuff that requires the human layer. And as we know, supplier relationship and getting the best strategic deal and working with the right people require that human touch and nuance and leverage and trust. AI can take over all the tactical work, but it's not going to get anywhere close to stuff that requires building relationships and working closely with people. So the takeaway from this is that AI is not dangerous. The takeaway is that it is good at what it is and what it's designed to be. And where it's not, it can be helpful if you provide the right guardrails and understand its weakness, and understand where it's going to mess up. So these are some of the common mistakes that I have seen when people are trying to think through where AI fits in and where it can get the biggest value. First is waiting for perfect data. If you wait for kind of the clean master data to make sure you're working with the right stuff, well, problem is you'll never end up starting. It's going to take forever and it's never going to be clean enough. AI is actually okay working with messy data in the right context, as long as you validate the output and have systems for extracting the right information at the right time. Second, it's very easy to try to push towards this huge transformation. We're going to transform our entire operations tomorrow and have this AI first operation. But in reality, you can't boil the ocean. Transforming everything at once in such a short period, all it means is it's creating chaos, resistance, and it might never provide any value. So we need to kind of manage this idea of kind of automating everything and kind of doing it iteratively where you can see ROI from day one. Third is not having an idea of what success looks like. I think having a moving target makes it very hard to understand what we are trying to do. And if you don't define the success criteria and ROI doesn't become objective, you'll be kind of arguing about opinions, like, is it working enough? It's at 90% and not 95%. How can we get it up there? It's not useful until it gets there. Having that clear ROI is kind of very important. Fourth, whenever you do any project like that, you need to have some person owning the project and ensuring its success. If nobody owns it, then the refinement and the improvement that AI needs, and like we talked about, AI is very heavily dependent on the context that goes in. So there's a lot of iteration that kind of goes into refining it and improving it. And if no one's kind of taking care of it and ensuring success there, it'll become a zombie project that exists, but no one uses because it's not good enough. And then the last one is thinking about change management, thinking about the upskilling of team, communication about what's changing and why, thinking about the skepticism that people have about adoption, and really focusing on improving that so people kind of value and get that adoption that they're looking for. I particularly wanted to dive into one of the data aspect that kind of comes often, because there's a very big kind of idea that without good data quality, AI is just not going to help. And some of that is true. Depending on where you're applying the AI, bad data means bad results. If someone's applying data for planning, having bad input will lead to bad output and bad predictions. And garbage in equals garbage out. But like we saw, AI can help fix some of the data problem too. AI can help move from this unstructured, messy data to making sure the data is structured properly. It's useful so that you can use it in the future. You can take information from PDFs and bit packages and packing slips and spreadsheets and update the source of truth, update the ERP, which in turn allows you to have better data to work on tasks like planning and use machine learning to have better predictions moving forward. So this is kind of a quick checklist that I kind of made to decide where AI is good and where it isn't and where it can provide the biggest value. At a high level, understanding if you have a clear outcome metric, understanding if it's repetitive or language heavy, seeing if you can describe the process to someone very clearly and you have clear judgment metrics, that's useful. Making sure you have the right integration so the AI has the necessary context to make good decisions. Audit trails and human approvals is kind of very important to understand that you have someone in the loop to make sure that AI doesn't mess something up, doesn't hallucinate. And the most obvious one, kind of having that fallback path. AI might mess up sometimes, something might go wrong. Well, what do you do then? Can you override the process and fix some of those things when needed? So we talked a lot about what AI is, generally where it's helpful, where it's not, how you should be thinking about it. One thing that we haven't touched on is what AI is working on and where it's kind of the most useful and where teams and you individually can see a lot of value from. First is documentation extraction. Supply chain teams are running on PDFs and attachments and invoices and quotes. If you want to ever pull any information, understand what's happening, just talk to the PDF. AI is very good at being able to do that. And it's kind of the easiest, fastest, low effort way that you can get. And this is something that also helps in the personal life too. Using AI to read your leasing agreement, to read your contract that someone's asking you to sign. AI is very good at kind of giving that context, answer any questions that you have, summarize any difficult areas that we should push back on, and understand risks and benefit from any kind of document or paperwork. Second thing that AI is really good at is kind of this email triage. A lot of supply chain work is often in emails. We have EDI, but a lot of conversation remains in emails, remains in other forums. AI is very good at reading some of these long threads and getting the necessary context and drafting responses or routing this information to the right people, or even updating the ERP. It's kind of closing the loop from having all of this useful data in emails and kind of pulling it into other sources like email and the ERP and the master data and other areas that aren't being updated. The next one is for things like RFQs and quote comparisons. There's a lot of manual steps that kind of go into generating an RFQ, normalizing a quote, and kind of comparing things side by side. This is another area that AI can be very good at. If you're using Excel, kind of manually taking notes and comparing things, if you're reading long quotes from PDFs, well, AI can be very good at extracting all that key information, putting it side by side, and helping you make informed decisions and move faster. The fourth one is visibility. So this is essentially the visibility layer of understanding where it's useful, where it's not useful, and kind of being able to see what provides the biggest value. So that's kind of one of the big ones that people often overlook. And being able to understand and answer questions like what's the status of this PO, what's blocked, what's at risk, and being able to ground it in real truth. That's kind of bread and butter for AI. And finally, kind of looking at all the data and looking for exceptions. AI is essentially doing pattern matching. And when a pattern isn't matching, it can kind of flag that risk. If something is not quite right, there's a price mismatch, there is some risk signals that are coming, we are hearing about late deliveries. AI is good at noticing those patterns and converting that into useful communication and flagging that for attention. So I think these are kind of, if you're starting today, these are the kind of areas that I would kind of look at and see where it fits into your workflow. And we should also talk about what's coming in the future and where people are seeing some value today and can start seeing some value in the short term. One of the big things that's kind of coming is context-aware recommendations. So not just flagging risk and delaying shipment, but suggesting actions like, what should we do next? Is there another supplier that we can work with? Should we expedite this PO, pull this forward, and pay for some expedited shipping, shift allocation to someone else? There's a lot of these interesting questions that it can kind of start answering, given enough context. And the hard part is making sure it understands your specific priorities, what's most important to you. Is this shipment going to stop the production line? Is this not that important? And a delay is not a huge deal. And kind of making sure it has the necessary context, the cost and customer priorities and contractual limits, so that it can start making intelligent decisions. Second is kind of dynamic lead time intelligence. So most of the time, we are using kind of static lead time to understand when things might come. We can kind of make it much more dynamic by using real-time information that's coming from the news, information about live carrier performance, traffic information, and even disruptions like the weather and a lot of cancellations that are going to happen because of the weather. This ends up being valuable because it kind of improves the planning cycle without asking teams to just guess or manually ask suppliers for updates every day to try and maintain that lead time and make sure things aren't at risk. The third one is kind of looking into supplier visibility. Everyone wants to kind of know the hidden bottlenecks before it hits the tier one supplier, but kind of diving into it is a lot of work, and we can kind of use AI to combine some of the supplier disclosures with some of the stuff that I mentioned in the second point, shipping patterns, new signals, and public information to map tier 2 network automatically and understand when something might be a risk and what we should do. It requires iteration, but it can start surfacing more risk earlier than traditional systems might. And kind of the final thing is what's coming in the future. And to close things out, I want to zoom out and paint the direction of where things are heading, because it changes what good looks like. A lot of these will gradually build over time within companies as they expand AI adoption and AI also gets better. And that's also one very important thing to note. The models itself that are running all of these operations are improving constantly. And as they improve, the risk of them hallucinating, the ability for them to take on more and more of these language tasks and routine work becomes better, and they'll kind of improve by itself. So one of the big things that's kind of coming is self-healing supply chain. This is where AI can start autonomously handling a lot of the routine everyday work, placing the routine orders, handling minor delays and price variance. This is where it can often help with things like tail spend, so people can be more confident in where the money is going and if it makes sense, and kind of taking off some of that very manual work. Second is kind of the overall supply chain moving from this moving towards proactive instead of reactive. Instead of finding out about problems after it hits, you can kind of use all this data that's coming in and act early, hedging against issues that might come up, orders that might get changed. using some of the information from earlier with news and other things to be able to also make longer term decisions about how you should be reacting and what changes you should be making so that you can be less reactive. And then the final one is strategic capacity. So this is often a larger goal because if you are kind of automating all the manual work, the team kind of stops living in firefighting mode. You get time back for working on resiliency and supplier relationship and strategic partnership and sustainability. And this is what actually ends up moving the business forward and allowing you to work on some of the strategic work. This is what I see as kind of moving teams to less firefighting and more like air traffic controller managing all of these different work at the same time and allowing people to move away from some of the tactical work. I know we're coming up on time, so I move to ask any questions or anything that you guys would want me to dive deeper into.
Hi, Sam. My name is Bob Merrily. I do have a quick question. A lot of the stuff seems really cool. I'm a dabbler in this. Very little experience. In a couple of minutes, could you give us an example of an input and an output that you've done recently that I mean, a kind of a wow moment that I put this in and this is what I got out. Could you give us a quick sample?
Yeah, the very low hanging fruit is contract management. You'll have situations where suppliers and people are giving you contracts and you want to have a very clear idea, like where is this okay? Where should we send this to legal team? Where is this kind of problematic? And we should start negotiating with them upfront. So a lot of the times you can set up kind of, you can give this AI kind of predetermined context, like, hey, these are how we like to do things. We like to be net 45. We like to have these policies in place. And the AI can kind of look through the contract and start doing and alerting you when something isn't matching up, when something isn't a good fit, and alerting the team when it needs to kind of take actions. A lot of the times, even now, you have lawyers and such kind of using AI to help with some of these things. Another kind of really big kind of wow moment that I've seen is some of the capabilities with agentic AI. So using agentic AI to take all this communication that's happening and taking it back to the ERP and automatically updating dates based on supplier delays. And if there's something that's going wrong, kind of updating the source of truth automatically and kind of closing the loop that was previously either not being closed or just kind of lost in emails and allowing that visibility to happen.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, I had a quick question. Good presentation. When you're talking to these customers about the 5 different ways they can implement AI, what kind of metrics or numerical cost savings are they seeing are most beneficial from when they're implementing these? Is it decreased lead times, better on-time performance, or like numerical cost savings?
It depends on what you're implementing. For example, I think a few examples that I gave, contract management would be productivity gains. If you're doing something with AI for helping with contract management, that's going to be measured very much in productivity gain and helping with reducing some of the cycle time. If you're using AI for planning, that can be more focused on OTIF rates and making sure that things are coming in time, fewer expedited deliveries, which can now help with more cost gains. If you are kind of looking at, so essentially it depends very much on where you want to apply it. Generally, there's kind of 3 themes. There is kind of productivity gain. That's the easiest one with AI. That's the low level hanging fruit. There is faster cycle times because people don't have to spend as much time working on the day-to-day and you can speed things up. And then there is also more ability to find cost savings when you're like working with tailspend or finding opportunities where you can better monitor what previously wasn't being monitored.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sam, I had a question. I was working on a project where trying to use AI in order to get some supplier quotes in and putting it into an upload file. Well, the columns are we're trying to get the columns named the same. And what I did, I probably had about 10 items that I wanted the chat GPT to do. And it kind of gets hung up as it's reading it. It's trying to change the Excel format to something else in order to read it better. And just it seemed like when I started with maybe two or three options at first, it did it okay. But now that I'm up to 9 or 10 items that I wanted to pull data out of one spreadsheet and put in the other, it's really hanging up. Is that better for an agent or is that, I mean, not even AI related? Should it just be like some X lookups?
So fundamentally, the last two. So fundamentally, when you're running these very long running tasks, the AI kind of starts messing up because it's not sure what the next step should be. It starts confusing itself. AI agents can kind of help with some of that because what they'll use is they'll use tools similar to how you might with XLOOKUP or some sort of code to do some of those translation. You can also, like you said, just go back to very deterministic XLOOKUPs and Excel systems, but agents would kind of help a lot with that because they can now use tools, whether it is working directly with CSVs to manipulate how things are, or using essentially a coding system where it's essentially doing XLOOKUP so it can get more deterministic continuous answers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you for the presentation. That was very insightful. I have a quick question. So, in your experience, like what excites you the most and worries you the most about the future of AI?
That's a good question. I think what excites me the most is it unlocks a lot of capabilities that previously weren't possible. I think it allows you to uh, learn a lot of new stuff that you didn't pick up much faster than before and get that context learning much faster than before. And I'm kind of excited for where supply chain will go based on that, because you can join a conversation and instantly pick up all the context and move towards doing more and more strategic work rather than stuck in some of the tactical day-to-day stuff. What worries me is this pace at which AI is going. It requires all of us to kind of upskill ourselves and make sure we are using AI, knowing where it's good, where it's bad, and being knowledgeable. And the hard thing is that because AI is improving so fast, what it was bad at 3 years ago or last year might no longer be the case anymore, which means we need to get somewhat familiar and kind of keep experimenting to know, has it gotten good at this task? Like in the last example, AI, this agent kind of idea wasn't a huge thing last year. It couldn't use tools. It was always messing up. But now you can have agents which are able to use external tools to do actions more consistently. So now it's kind of opened up the opportunity to do a lot of these longer running operations and difficult tasks.
Thank you.
Hey, Sam, I have a quick question for you. So, just a little background. I've seen how they use AI and chatbots for RFQs. It's amazing, right? You're looking at your low-hanging fruit, as you said, and it's opening windows. One of the things I wondered was I used to manage long-term, they were called evergreen, with every 2 years we'd do a deep dive and look at it, right? So as we were doing these, financially, those questions were, they were quick. Our problem was when someone didn't want to use the general terms and conditions that were currently in there, right? Maybe it's my legal one saying my company's so big, I want mine on everything. Theirs on the other one of the things I wondered, I'm not doing anymore, is has anyone tried to use AI literally, because it was one of our biggest, if you will, bottlenecks, to look at the two to say, because they're not in the same format, they're not in the same language, but we would have to send it to legal, who would look it all up and then feedback. And we were always having to do extensions because But has anyone ever tried using AI to say, okay, materially, it's almost the same, or, hey, they're asking for 30 days versus whatever. Has anyone tried to do that successfully? Because that feels like to me that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and I think this is a very good point that you bring up, Tammy. This kind of thing is very good for AI to be able to do, and you can use the base AI models, ChatGPT, Gemini, and get 60, 70% of the way there just with them without adding too much context. If you add both the contracts in there and give it what you're looking for, what are you looking for? B, is it similar enough? Is it different? What are matching? What are not matching? And have that kind of first layer of checking. I often do that myself. For example, if I am comparing leases, I'm looking at different terms and understanding what's changing from my lease last year to this year. And AI is very capable of taking all of these data and allowing you to compare and understand what's working. And similarly, this can also help with things like three-way invoice matching and reconciliation, taking all these different attachments and information, reconciling it, and using AI to understand any discrepancies or changes or differences.
That's really interesting. You could even, like you said, use it in your personal life just to make sure it's apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Now, I just wondered if people were doing that because it felt like it was an easy thing to do quick. But again, I'm not doing that anymore, so I don't have that nightmare. Thank you.